Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Made in New England interview series, where we interview New England based companies and the people who lead them. I'm your host, Steve DeVries, and today I'm joined by Ethan Bender, founder and co owner of Beefy's Own. Ethan, welcome to the podcast.
Very much, Steve. I appreciate you having me on, my man.
Awesome. Well, Ethan, maybe you could just start us out with a little bit of a brief background of yourself and Beefy's Own. Tell us all about you and the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we fry potato chips in beef tallow. We started about 3 years ago, and at the time, we were the very first and only company to do it. And in this point, I think there's 9 or 10 other competitors who have entered the beef tallow potato chip game. So over just a few years, it's really accelerated. And myself, I actually don't know if I've told you this before, Steve. I'm an engineering student at Virginia Tech, and so this is kind of like my not really side gig. I'd say it's more my main gig, but getting that engineering degree is almost kind of the side gig now. So I've got one more year left to doing that. And then together with my father and sister, we all own and operate this company based out of Derry, New Hampshire. So that's just a quick, who we are and what we do.
Very cool. So tell me about beef tallow, because I think most people are, when you think about potato chips, right? I
Hmm.
would think anyway that it's, the potato chips are being fried in some kind of like a vegetable oil type of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
tell us
absolutely.
let's just talk about beef tallow for a second.
Totally. Yeah. So back in the day, and this is actually one of the things right on the back of our bag, the original potato chip recipe, I think it was from roughly the mid 1800s. It was, slice your potatoes kind of thick and just fry them in lard or, I think they used the term beef drippings or something like that. So back in the day, vegetable oil was invented around 1910 or so. Before then, it was all lard and beef tallow, lard being rendered pig fat. So we were really completely and solely animal fat based before just a little over 100 years ago. And then, Crisco came in and beef or vegetable oil really, they marketed it very aggressively and got a lot of the American consumers to switch over by, the late 1900s and into the turn of the century. It was, a very little known thing. You'd say tallow and people don't even know what you're talking about. And so, kind of recently, in my opinion, probably the past 5, 10 years, especially with RFK frying his turkey and beef tallow on this past Thanksgiving. I don't know if you saw that. There's
I
kind of
did.
been this re-explosion of popularity for beef tallow as a less processed oil to use. Kind of back to the roots, back to what we've always been eating and thriving on. As I'm sure there's been all these chronic health issues as of the past, really 100, years or so. And so at the time, when I started this company, I just I didn't eat vegetable oils. It was just one of the things I've kind of cut out of my diet, and I felt a lot better after doing that. And I was thinking about a potato chip. There's nothing really super processed about a potato chip besides the fact it's fried in vegetable oil. Otherwise it's you buy a potato from the grocery store, you can cut it into a slice and fry it up in a pan in some olive oil, and that's a potato chip. Pretty easy to make, not necessarily an ultra processed food. So I really just kind of wanted to take that ultra processed element out of a potato chip. And as you pointed out, that pretty much doesn't really exist. Almost all potato chips are fried in vegetable oil. So I just kind of wanted to give people that option. And I myself enjoy our chips quite a bit as well.
Well, I'll tell you, the first time I ate your chips,
Uh,
I met your dad and
mhm.
we got to talking, and it happened to be, in the same building as where your factory
Yeah.
is. And he broke out a bag of chips, and I had never tasted any potato chip like that, like
Yeah.
amazing. And to the point where now I'm looking for opportunities to go to the closest store to go grab some, because it's really good. And so,
Appreciate it.
at the risk of turning this into an infomercial, I'm telling y'all out there, if you like chips, you got to try Beefy's Own. It tastes like nothing you've ever had.
Absolutely.
Well, so, your company's a couple of years old, right?
Hmm.
And so what's driven your success to this point? If you had to summarize that, why do you think being the first, beef tallow potato chip manufacturer out there, why are people following you? What's made you successful?
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you pretty much said it. We've got a unique product, and I won't toot my own horn here, but I think they taste pretty darn good. And really, if I had to just say one thing that has just really fueled our success, it's just the product. It speaks for itself. We go to other retailers, and we just let them sample them, and they want them on their shelves just like that. We haven't had to do so much time, effort, money, all of that towards getting these retailers, which is kind of the big key. We do direct to consumer, but what every big company really wants is these big contracts with retailers, and they kind of just want it. We don't really need to sell it. The product's just good enough, and that has been the most major thing. And then that allows us to focus on making an even better product and making enough of them rather than spending all of our time and energy aggressively marketing. So I'd say really just the product and it speaking for itself.
Cool. And so you said earlier that you've been an engineering student at Virginia Tech. And
Mhm.
so what made you want to be a business owner?
Well, quite honestly, so I started this business right before I left for college in the first place. It's always really been kind of my dream to own my own business. I would say I'm good at math and science type things, so that's kind of why I just went towards engineering, kind of a safe bet, I guess you could say. But really, ever since I've been pretty young, I knew that that was the dream, that was the goal one day to be my own boss. I've worked some other jobs where I'm not the boss, I'm the employee, and I'm fine, but I just know that that's not what I wanna do. And another thing as well is my dad currently owns his own business as well. He's owned 1 or 2 in the past that he's also started over the course of his life, so even from a young age, seeing my dad own his own business kind of instilled upon me the desire to own my own, and, I'd say that's really the biggest thing.
So you've got entrepreneurship blood running through those veins.
Coursing through the veins, yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, so as a business owner, right, a relatively new business owner, when you look at the performance of your business, how do you know that it's going in the direction that you want it to go? What things do you look at?
Yeah, I mean, so number one, the obvious answer, the sales, they're growing month on month. It's a good sign. I think one of the bigger things for me is seeing what all of our customers online have to say, the reviews they're leaving, the posts they're making in social media, just talking to someone like you and saying, you said these chips are great or whatever. I love talking to people and just seeing what they have to say and just getting such a high percentage of extremely positive reviews. I think that for me really shows that what we're doing is right and we're going in the right direction, as well as retailers coming to us and they'll email me like, I can't even keep these chips on the shelf, like put in another order for me. Just hearing stuff like that about our chips is really that's probably the biggest thing. And I love to hear it.
How do you juggle being a business owner and being an engineering student? Engineering is not for the faint of heart as far as education is concerned. So obviously it's summertime right now, so not a big deal. But are you burning the candle at both ends when you're back at school?
Yeah, so I'm definitely pretty busy at school between juggling the two of them. And then that's another thing. I mean, obviously, my dad, he's been working with me on this for longer than my sister has, and he's been awesome, kind of taking up the production side at home when I'm away, and I can handle kind of all the online stuff. But then, this past year, we've really, really grown a lot. And so that's when my sister kind of came on board with us. She's been almost a year she's been with us. So she's been able to really, really help as well when I'm at school, kind of picking up some of the slack and doing things that I might not necessarily have the time to do. And so the two of them really have been just huge. And then also we have about 4 or 5 employees now at this point, so we can start kind of instead of just doing the production ourselves, they can kind of take care of most of it, and then that leaves them more time to do everything else that comes with running a business. So
Absolutely.
just yeah, the other people in my life have been super helpful in helping share the burden.
Okay. So when you think about the future of your business, what excites you the most about it?
Good question. I mean, personally, I think the way we're headed health-wise as a nation, as the world, hopefully, is to really eventually, this is definitely be a while from now, completely shift away from eating any vegetable oils. I think it's going to be a bit like the whole trans fats margarine thing, where right now we look back and we're like, they really told people to eat margarine loaded with trans fats instead of just butter. Like, that's crazy to us nowadays because we
Mhm.
know how bad trans fats are. And I think in the future, we're going to look back at kind of this time period and be like, they really told people to deep fry in vegetable oil. Like, that's crazy. Why, those idiots, why would they do that? And so I think one day might be a decent bit away. You're really going to see the shelves completely devoid of any vegetable oil containing products. At least that's how I hope the world is going to be one day. And so if we're the first potato chip brands to ditch the vegetable oils and go after the beef tallow, who's to say we can't kind of become the premier potato chip brand one day, the middle of the shelf right at eye level in the snack aisle, which is the perfect placement. That's what you want to be as a brand and just kind of be the first and be the best. And that's what excites me because I think that there's very real and legitimate possibility that given enough time that that's where we can end up.
Let's talk about the health side for a minute. So you're talking about beef tallow being far better for us than vegetable oil.
Mhm.
Why did we go to vegetable oil in versus like a tallow in the first place?
Yeah. So back in the early 1900s, cotton used to be a big crop grown here. And once you pick all the cotton, you have a ton of these seeds left over. It's considered at the time waste. You can't do anything with these seeds. It's way more seeds you need than, to plant new cotton plants. And so what people started to do is they grind up and press these seeds out and get the oil, the teeny amount of oil out of these seeds, and they'd use it as like a machine engine lubricant, sometimes to burn oil lantern, those types of things. And so, but that still did not even come close to utilizing all of these leftover wasted seeds. And so that's when Crisco came around, I believe in 1911, and that's what Crisco stands for, crystallized cottonseed oil. And so they employed these chemists and they took this liquid oil, which came from the cottonseed, and no one was used to liquid oil. They were used to tallow and lard, which is solid. So they couldn't sell that to people for them to eat. They're all like, this is weird. I don't want to eat this. And they crystallized it and they turned it into a solid fat, and so then they marketed this Crisco, which resembles visually a lot like tallow, actually. And that was the point. They wanted it to look like what people are used to. And so essentially, they took a waste product, which you could get for extremely cheap, obviously, and they turned it into something that, after a couple decades of extremely aggressive marketing, was a highly sought after and typically used cooking oil. And so, as you can imagine, the profit margins on that are pretty insane when you're essentially, people might even be paying you to take all these cotton seeds towards the beginning when they're so useless. And so it ended up being pretty bad for human health, but it was a great business decision. Even to this day, Crisco is a huge company, and that's how they started by crystallizing this cottonseed oil.
Wow. And so you're taking on this behemoth of a company and demonstrating to everybody that there's a better way to do it, and it's the old way, which is I think
Absolutely.
is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So now you talked about what excites you about your business. If I could hand you a magic wand and you could wave it over your business,
hmm
what would you it's still a young company, so I could say what could you change about it? What would you do with a magic wand if you could do one thing for your business right now?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I think one thing for us that it would just be awesome, this would be a very magic wand if just it didn't exist, is shipping costs and the variability that comes with them. Because, we know what our margins are, but then we ship to a retailer, you know, in New Hampshire or Massachusetts versus shipping to a distributor retailer in California. That just changes our margin so much. And we also do direct to consumer as well. So we're shipping all around the nation up to Canada. We've got people in Hawaii. We've got a couple of retailers there. And it just adds this element of variability that is, I mean, obviously, we work through it, but if that just didn't exist somehow and I waved the wand and it was gone and I could just transport instantaneously my chips to wherever, I wanted them to go, that'd be awesome. It'd simplify things a lot.
Keep working on that engineering degree.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, just maybe, hopefully.
So the name of the show is Made in New England. And so I always like
Mhm.
to ask people, how does being, and you may have just answered it, right? So,
Yeah.
but the question is, how does being in New England impact your business, pros or cons?
Yeah, well, there's definitely the shipping aspect. I think an awesome pro for us is the proximity to places like New York City, Boston, up and down the coast of New Jersey and all the just the northeast coast is a huge hotspot for just a lot of business, obviously. And especially I'd say being so close to New York City specifically, we would love to really get into a lot of places there. We're in the process of doing that obviously right now. And so that's definitely a big pro, but also, on the other side of that, the West Coast is also really big, especially for products like beef tallow right now, and that really couldn't be much further from where we are right now. So that's a bit of a con, but you can't be everywhere all at once. So I'd say
Very
New
true.
Hampshire has also I haven't had any experience setting up a business in something place like Massachusetts, but I'd imagine the laws there are a little bit more strict. There's probably some more regulations. You have to jump through some more hoops in order to get a business up and going. Where I feel personally like New Hampshire, kind of encourages entrepreneurship a little bit more by making it a little easier for a small business to get up and going. So I'd say that's another pro of specifically New Hampshire, but New England.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so, I mean, you have a really unique profile. You are a student, an engineering student, and you've started this successful business that has nothing to do with the degree that you're currently pursuing. And it was
Yeah,
interesting for you to say, this started as the side gig, and now maybe the degree has become a little bit more of the side gig.
yeah,
But I know that there's a lot of people, a lot of young people, students, you see it all the time. There's so much entrepreneurship out there in your generation right now.
mhm,
Even my son, right, who's just turned 18, came to me the other day and started talking to me about some entrepreneurial things that he's seeing on social media. And so you're only a few years older than him at this point.
yeah,
What advice would you give to people who, let's say your peers, right? People
mhm,
who want to pursue their education, but they have this entrepreneurial fire burning inside and they have this great idea and they want to pursue it, but maybe
yeah,
not maybe not put the education off to the side
yeah,
completely. What
yeah,
advice do you like? I've never talked with, had anybody like you on this podcast before. So I'm really interested in your insight on
yeah.
how do you make that all work? How do you balance it?
I would say it's a lot of patience and just understanding that, things like this aren't going to happen overnight. It's brick by brick. And even if you don't feel like each day you're doing a ton towards that goal, just taking one little step and just being patient, like I said, it's going to take a long time for these things to materialize the way, you might be envisioning, but just always be going forward and just trying to, just bit by bit, brick by brick, build what you have in mind. And I mean, that's really what I did. Just it's been over 3 years now, and I feel like there's some days, especially when I'm at school, that I haven't like done anything for this business, and it's what I'd prefer to spend my day doing. But I know in my head, you just got to stay patient. Like in a couple days, I've got all these things I want to do, and I'll do them then. And just you know, knowing that it's gonna take a while and you just can't really give up. The only way you're gonna, like, really truly fail is if you just decide to stop trying. And so, just keep going. That's it. Just do it and keep going.
Keep swimming, as they
Yeah,
say, right?
exactly.
I love that. Well, we've been talking with Ethan Bender, the founder of Beefy's Own Potato Chips. Ethan, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. Thank you for having me on. It's been awesome to share our story.
My pleasure. For all of you out there watching and listening, I'm going to tell you right now, go try these Beefy's Own chips. Again, not to sound like an infomercial, but wow, are they good. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And again, Ethan, thanks for being here. And we'll see y'all soon with a new episode coming up very shortly. Have a great day.